This video is sponsored by Skillshare. How's it going, folks? I'm Des with DesFit, and I think most people know that the Skydio 2 kind of reigns supreme when it comes to autonomous tracking. The tech that they've got inside this thing is kind of amazing, and it makes it my go-to drone when it comes to following me on the bike. And then when it comes to DJI drones, I haven't necessarily had the best luck with ActiveTrack on some older models, but I have had some really good results with the Mavic Air 2S with ActiveTrack 4.0. So in this video, I wanted to do kind of like a demonstration / comparison of the autonomous tracking capabilities between the Mavic Air 2S versus the Skydio 2 on a section of road that I thought would be kind of an interesting test because it contained a lot of curves and corners. So for this test, I chose this particular section of road because it was very quiet at this time of day, and for safety, I also had a visual observer to keep an eye on the airspace, the drone, as well as watch for traffic. So let's first start with the DJI Mavic Air 2S. So on both of these tests on both drones, I set the drones to be directly behind me, and this is sort of important to note when we get to the Skydio 2. So with the Air 2S on this run, you can see it kind of got close to the wall of this rock on the right-hand side, but it tracked me just fine. I'm still going pretty slow at this point just to see how it was going to react, and as you can see, it's holding the rear position pretty darn well. And then around this next sharp corner, it again sort of got close to this rock face on the right-hand side, but it still held its rear position. So at this point, I was pretty confident with the Air 2S, so here's where I started to speed up a little bit. This S-bend was kind of interesting here, where it did a really great job at tracking me and staying behind me for the most part. And then here's where I started to speed up a bit more as I was starting to get more confident with it and not worry about it too much. And then this last corner was going to be a good test of how it tracks, since there was this wall of rock to the right, so I was curious how it would compensate for that, being that I had it tracking me from the rear. And as you can see, it got pretty close yet again, but probably a little too close for my comfort level, but you can see it slowed down and almost got directly above me, but still was solid with the tracking. And then I stopped right here because there was a vehicle approaching, as well as some power lines that were up ahead. So before we get to the Skydio 2 footage, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for learning new skills like graphic design, web design, video editing, personal development, productivity, and even health and wellness. A course that was particularly useful for me and I found to be a great resource was the Introduction to Aerial Videography for Drone Filming, where it can teach you everything you need to know for creating a drone video just like this one, including preparing and planning your project, understanding different drone moves, setting up the shoot, and staying safe on your shoot. And then if you need tips and tricks on how to edit your drone film, there's lots of great classes on video editing on both Adobe Premiere Pro as well as Apple's Final Cut Pro. Anyhow, the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description below will get a free trial of a Skillshare premium membership, so check out the description below for more details. So now on to the Skydio 2. So just like the Air 2S, I had the Skydio 2 set up to track me from the rear, but you can already see that it positioned itself a bit to my left. So what I think it was trying to do was be a bit more safe with the wall of rock on the right-hand side. But what's funny is that it did kind of get close to that wall of rock on the right-hand side in this first corner, but it did correct itself really quickly and again repositioned itself to the left rear of me rather than directly behind me. And then as things opened up a bit here where there isn't a wall of rock, here's where we can see that it stays directly behind me, and then as soon as it sees the rock on the right-hand side, it kind of moves to the left. It's pretty smart. And here's where I started to pick up the speed a bit to just see how it would react around this corner, and again, it kind of swept to the left. And what you may notice is that it's tracking me really precisely, but it's also really sensitive and it makes very quick moves, which is a good thing from a safety and obstacle avoidance standpoint, but it doesn't necessarily make for as smooth of footage. Oh, and by the way, I was just using visual tracking, I wasn't using the beacon. And then on this entire section here where there's rock on the right-hand side, again, it's staying to the left of me, and then around these curves, as I increase speed a bit more, it stayed super tight. And then on the last corner, it wanted nothing to do with the rocks on the right-hand side and literally got on top of me and actually lost visual sight of me for a moment, but it recovered and seemed like it sort of predicted the movement that I was going to make, and it locked back on. And then here's where I stopped again. Overall, a great result from both drones, but some fascinating differences in terms of how they tracked. The Mavic Air 2S is probably the first DJI drone where I actually trust ActiveTrack, and it did a really great job here. The Skydio 2, as expected, did a really good job as well, but it was kind of interesting with the Skydio 2 where it made sure to avoid the rock faces on the right-hand side, even though I did have it tracking in a rearward position, so it kind of just stayed to the left and to keep itself safe. The other thing I found was that with the Skydio 2, it was very precise in its tracking and movements, but that also means that the footage was a little bit more jerky. So if you want more cinematic-like footage, you may need to position it higher than the DJI. So for a scenario like this, I would trust either of these drones, but when it comes to choosing which one, it may come down to the convenience factor of actually carrying them around, and this is sort of a double-edged sword. So with the Air 2S, it is a smaller drone that can be folded up, but you also do have to have a controller. With the Skydio 2, you don't necessarily have to have this big controller, you can just use your smartphone, but you can't fold up the Skydio 2, and you have to carry it around in a rather large case. But one more factor to consider, especially with cycling, is that with the DJI, to have full control of your drone, you're going to have to mount this controller on your handlebars, but again, either way, I would trust either of these drones in this sort of situation. Anyhow, this was just one autonomous tracking test I wanted to do with the Skydio 2 versus the Air 2S with ActiveTrack 4.0, but also I'm going to be doing a lot more tests with mountain biking, especially involving some tree cover, which should make things a little bit spicy. So make sure to subscribe to get a notification when those videos come out. And if the information in this video did help you out at all, or if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button down below. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.